What if I told you that you have been lied to, not once, not twice, but for centuries? From slave ships to sitcoms, from textbooks to social media, these are the 10 most dangerous lies ever told about Black people. And they weren't random. It was all orchestrated. Scope News presents a deep dive into the 10 lies they tell about Black people. These lies were strategically planted, designed to control, humiliate, erase, and exploit, backed by governments, repeated by media, protected by policy. And now they live on in the minds of millions. But today, Scope News is pulling back the curtain, because once you see how deep the deception goes, you'll never look at Black America the same way again. Picture this. It's the plantation fields of the South, the sun burning down as enslaved Africans labor from sunup to sundown. They grow crops, build infrastructure, raise white children, and nurse them at their own breasts. Yet centuries later, their descendants are branded lazy, criminal, uneducated, and poor. How could such a grotesque reversal of reality take hold? The answer lies in a campaign of lies, 10 of the most destructive myths, each crafted to dehumanize and destroy. Lie number 1. Black people are lazy. Nothing could be further from the truth. Enslaved Africans provided the backbone of America's economy, free labor that built empires. After emancipation, African Americans worked as sharecroppers, domestics, railroad hands, and steel workers. Yet this stereotype was kept alive to stigmatize Black labor. Employers often imported immigrants, praising them as docile and contrasting them with African Americans who resisted exploitation. In 1964, the St. Petersburg Times reported that growers in Florida, facing wage hikes for Black farm laborers, instead went abroad. Docile Caribbean laborers, willing to work for a lower pay scale, were brought in to replace African Americans demanding fair wages. The same mindset extended to Haitian immigrants decades later. In nursing homes, white supervisors admitted, "We call them from the islands." They have a different caliber than Black Americans, a higher caliber, very neat, everything neat about them. They have a different rhythm, completely different. Employers rewarded Haitians for a so-called lack of race consciousness, praising them as workers who would not challenge the system. Even within the diaspora, divisions widened. Marcus Garvey, though remembered by many as a Pan-Africanist, was also accused of fraudulent behavior. The Messenger in 1923 branded him a supreme Negro Jamaican jackass, accusing him of financial conmanship and misleading Black followers with the failed Black Star Line. His antics reinforced to some the lie that Black leaders were unserious, even as immigrants were positioned as model classes. And let's not forget the Immigration Act of 1965. Before it, many groups, Chinese, Africans, Caribbeans, were largely restricted from entering the U.S. in significant numbers. African Americans were the ones who endured slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and civil rights, paving the way for a more inclusive America. Yet once the gates opened, some immigrants arrived and quickly positioned themselves as model minorities, looking down on the very people whose struggle made their entry possible. And today, many Black Americans feel a growing sense of immigrant fatigue, tired of outsiders cosplaying African American identity, using our struggle for social capital, and speaking for us instead of standing with us. The reality is undeniable. If laziness defined African Americans, slavery, Reconstruction, and the civil rights movement would never have existed. Laziness is a lie. Resistance is the truth. Lie number 2. Black people are all on welfare. The myth of Black people as welfare dependent is one of the most politically weaponized lies of the 20th century. In the 1970s and 1980s, Ronald Reagan popularized the image of the welfare queen, a caricature of a Black woman defrauding the system. But actual statistics prove otherwise. As of 2022, 37% of SNAP, food stamp recipients were white, while 26% were Black, 16% Hispanic, and 3% Asian. The majority of welfare benefits go to white households. Medicaid data mirrors the same pattern. White Americans are the largest group on government health assistance. Yet the stereotype of the black welfare abuser persists. This lie wasn't about numbers. It was about crafting a villain that fit America's racial anxieties. Lie number 3. Black people live on food stamps. Similar to welfare, the image of African Americans as the face of food stamps is media manipulation. In reality, poverty in rural white communities produces staggering reliance on assistance. Counties in Kentucky, West Virginia, and Maine have food stamp usage rates above 30%. But cameras don't show Appalachia, they show Harlem, they show South Central. They zoom in on a black mother at the grocery checkout. The goal: create the illusion that food insecurity is uniquely black. The numbers tell the truth. Of the 41 million people on food stamps in 2021, 16 million were white and 10 million were black. More whites than blacks rely on the program, but only one image dominates the public imagination. That's the lie. Lie number 4. Black people don't value education. This is one of the most insulting lies. From slavery, when teaching a black person to read could get you killed, African Americans pursued education as liberation. Parents risked their lives to teach their children. After emancipation, schools for freedmen were established across the South, often burned down by mobs who feared literate black citizens. Historically, black colleges and universities, HBCUs, became pillars of excellence. Booker T. Washington, who founded Tuskegee University, described the harsh task of begging white donors for support while also training black students to build a nation, and generations of families have sacrificed to put their children through college. Yet the stereotype persists that African Americans don't value education. On Married to Medicine, a Ghanaian newcomer had the audacity to say, "Africans value education." Sitting across from African American surgeons and physicians, she revealed how deep the stereotype runs, even among fellow black immigrants. Even on mainstream platforms, these dismissive narratives pop up. On a Jubilee episode, a young Congolese man made sweeping comparisons that felt dismissive of African Americans and movements like BLM. His claims were erroneous, and Amanda Seales, love her or hate her, was right to push back. And then there's Barack Obama's father, Barack Obama Sr. He came to the U.S. on a scholarship program funded and supported by African American advocates. Yet while here, he reportedly impregnated multiple women, failed to complete his PhD, and was eventually dismissed. His personal failures have been quietly buried, while African Americans are smeared as uneducated. The truth: African Americans valued education so much, they opened the very door that allowed Obama Sr. to step into America. Lie number 5. Black people are violent and harm each other. Black-on-black crime is one of the most weaponized phrases in America. The numbers show that 93% of black homicide victims are killed by other black people, exactly the same interracial rate as whites, 84%. Here's the hard, uncomfortable truth. Yes, intra-community violence is real in black neighborhoods, as it is in every racial group. But what makes it toxic is not the existence of crime, it's the way it's weaponized. This problem should never be used to paint an entire people. Because alongside the statistics are the go-getters, the inventors, the innovators, the groundbreakers in every sector of American life. To use the actions of a fraction to erase the excellence of millions is deliberate distortion. The roots of this lie run deep. During the crack epidemic, narcotics weren't just sold, they were planted. The CIA's role in allowing cocaine trafficking into black neighborhoods has been documented by the U.S. Senate. Drugs were funneled into our communities, and then their presence was weaponized to brand African Americans as naturally violent. At the same time, when opioids devastated white suburbs, the narrative shifted to compassion and rehabilitation. The hypocrisy is glaring. Let's not forget COINTELPRO, a covert FBI operation that illegally surveilled, infiltrated, and disrupted black civil rights groups and leaders, including Dr. King and the Black Panthers. It wasn't about justice, it was about control. Lie number 6. Black people flood the prisons. It's true that Black Americans make up 38% of the U.S. prison population, while only 12% of the general population. But the cause isn't crime, it's policy. Crack versus powder cocaine sentencing disparities meant Black offenders served 100 times longer sentences. Stop and frisk in New York criminalized everyday presence. Redline neighborhoods were over-policed by design. Nixon's advisors even admitted the war on drugs was created to target Black communities. Compare incarceration globally. The U.S. has 2.1 million people incarcerated, the highest prison population in the world. Blackness in America was criminalized to fuel prison labor and political scapegoating. Mass incarceration isn't proof of pathology, it's proof of systemic engineering. Lie number 7. Black women are all baby mamas. The baby mama myth is one of the most damaging stereotypes. Data shows that 67% of Black children live in single-parent homes, compared to 42% of Hispanic children and 24% of white children. But numbers don't tell the whole story. In the mid-20th century, policies in states like Alabama explicitly stated that if a man was found in the home, the woman would lose her benefits. This man-in-the-house rule forced fathers out, destabilizing families. It was a system built not on natural dysfunction, but on deliberate sabotage. The rule was challenged in King versus Smith, 1968, where the Supreme Court struck it down, yet by then, the damage had already been done to countless Black families. The Moynihan Report of 1965 cemented this stereotype by labeling Black households matriarchal and broken, ignoring systemic sabotage. The prison system ripped fathers away, welfare laws locked them out, and the stereotype of the baby mama was born.
Was staggered by it. Moynihan says the Negro family structure is collapsing, and we asked him the reasons.
The first is, remember that American slavery was the worst slavery the world has ever known. We can't get that into our heads.
Meanwhile, white single mothers, who outnumber Black single mothers in raw totals, are rarely stigmatized. Barack Obama himself was raised by a single white mother. The myth is not a reflection of reality, it's a reflection of policy. Lie number 8. Black people are all drug dealers. The crack era cemented the image of Black men as pushers and thugs. But statistics show the majority of drug users and sellers in America are white. Despite this, Black Americans are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies that fueled the opioid crisis devastated mostly white towns. Since 1999, opioids have killed more than 500,000 people. Yet when white bodies were at risk, the narrative shifted to addiction instead of crime. Executives paid fines, Black men paid with decades behind bars. The hypocrisy is staggering. Lie number 9. Black people are ghetto. Ghetto is a word born in Europe to describe Jewish segregation. In America, it became shorthand for Black inferiority. But ghettos were manufactured by policy. Redlining, white flight, and highway projects that bulldoze Black neighborhoods. Detroit's Paradise Valley, Miami's Overtown, and St. Paul's Rondo were vibrant Black communities destroyed by urban renewal. Banks refused loans, cities refused investment, and then the survivors were labeled ghetto. Caribbean immigrants were praised as docile and different, while African Americans were demeaned. Garvey's failures were weaponized as proof of Black unseriousness. The word ghetto never described people, it described oppression. Lie number 10. Black people are all poor. Despite centuries of theft, today African Americans wield over $1.6 trillion in spending power as of 2023, the highest in the diaspora. That's why Ghana launched the Year of Return in 2019, targeting African American tourists. That's why Benin followed suit, disappointed when Caribbean tourists came instead of African Americans. Politicians know it too. No campaign season passes without heavy appeals to black voters and black consumers. Yes, systemic racism restricts wealth. Black home ownership rates remain 30% lower than whites. Black families hold 1/10 the wealth of white families. But poor? No. The truth is that African Americans are both disproportionately locked out of wealth and disproportionately influential as consumers. The narrative of poverty serves one purpose: to erase power. The bigger picture taken together, these lies form a system. They justify exploitation, erase truth, and divide the black world. Employers preferred docile immigrants over resistant African Americans. Politicians invented the welfare queen while hiding white dependents on assistance. Media turned crime into a uniquely black problem. Drugs were deliberately planted into black neighborhoods to criminalize us further. Legislators in Alabama forced fathers out of the home and then smeared black women as unstable. And even Barack Obama's father benefited from African American struggle, only for his story to be erased. The reality is that African Americans built this country, valued education, raised families against impossible odds, and continue to wield massive cultural and economic power. These lies were never about truth. They were about control. So please, stop the cap.
Out of our heritage, as somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day.
Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Sources include The Messenger, January 1923, a Supreme Negro Jamaican jackass. St. Petersburg Times, February 14, 1964, tax bill wage deal charged. Census and welfare data from USDA and U.S. Census Bureau, Bureau of Justice Statistics incarceration reports. SNAP food stamp distribution data, Senate investigations into CIA drug trafficking, and historical studies on redlining, COINTELPRO, and HBCUs. Legal disclaimer. This report is created for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes. It contains historical references, statistics, and direct archival quotes intended to shed light on systemic racism and its legacy. Scope News makes its best effort to be factual, but acknowledges the limitations of available data and historical bias. Viewer discretion is advised, as some content may be disturbing or offensive. This content is not intended to promote division, but to highlight truths often erased from mainstream narratives.